he gives the stale bread to his kids and they start fighting over it. So when they came and they saw the kids fighting over stale bread, they said, there's nothing here, and they'd leave. So the Jews became good, clever at that type of thing, because they could not survive unless they did that. Can you understand that? Okay. I was addressing a bunch of Afro-Americans on the future, and I was telling them that in the future there'll be a moneyless society. This black guy said, I already live in a moneyless society. I don't have any money. So you can understand that the environment you grow up in shapes your behavior to a large extent. If you don't understand that, I don't think unless you guys are loaded, stop at a certain place and buy the most expensive watch. You buy the watch you can afford. So your taste and your judgment, very few people think of taking a world cruise because it would cost so much. They don't even entertain the idea. If you work in a factory, you don't even think of taking your family out on a world cruise. But if you're successful in business, you might. So a democracy is no good unless people can act on their beliefs. They can't. I try to tell people what a true democracy would be. I don't know if you caught that at the session. The president would criticize the country for 1 hour or an hour and a half. Then when he got through, we would invite the prime minister of that country on there to give his point of view. Then we invite the prime minister of Sweden. He says, they're both full of shit. This is how I say it. That's a democracy. Instead of just religion on Sunday, you have the world's religions presented on different stations, and non-religions, and atheism, agnosticism, all points of view, Buddhism, Zen, everything on the air. It's up to the audience. That's a democracy. I've never seen that anywhere. Evidence. Just like a person says, Jesus was wonderful. He was kind to the poor. He prevented people from stoning a girl that had sex before marriage. They'd stone her to death. And Jesus said, he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. Well, not much to it. Because he said a lot of good things, but he did not know how to prevent things. You know, if people don't have food to eat, they steal food. You understand? Or they steal food first if things are very bad for their kids, usually. So I'm telling you, the way anybody behaves has to do with their upbringing. If you're brought up by a pastor in the black community and he's a nice guy, the church becomes a pleasant place for you to go to. But if this guy says, we don't have too much of a congregation today, you say, well, there's the Depression. They can't give 10% of their income to the church. Well, during the Depression, many ministers in America joined the Communist Party, the Socialist Party, the technocracy, all the divergent groups, because they couldn't support the church. And the technocracy talked about giving all people a piece of the pie. So I joined technocracy. Did I ever describe that to you? But I joined after the first lecture. The guy said, we want an energy society and divide that energy amongst people. And I thought that was great compared to anything else I heard. So I joined. But I noticed there were no blacks. So I said to Scott, who was the chief engineer, how come there's no blacks? And he said, the blacks, let them start their own community. And on the application I noticed it said race. And that has nothing to do with anything. And I didn't like that. I then noticed about a week later there were no Orientals. I said, how come there's no Orientals? He said, the Oriental mind can't grasp technology. Because when I was a kid, they wore pigtails and a little black hat and the hands in the sleeves and black suits with buttons, of course. They all walked around and always did that. They all looked alike. And Scott took that and said, the Oriental mind can't grasp technology. Today they lead the world in robotics. I argued with him. I tried to turn him around. I could not. So I resigned from technocracy because There were no blacks and no Orientals. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. Now, was it bad? Yes. A lot of technocrats got mad at me. And they think that I'm a technocrat. Some people think I'm a communist. Some people think I'm a fascist. When people confront you with, you want to give everybody something for nothing. When we're born on this earth, we got the whole earth for nothing years ago. And then this guy with his little tribe invaded your tribe that was smaller and took your land away and your women and your food. And that's what a nation is. A nation is a bunch of thieves, better equipped than other thieves. And they take things, resources, or whatever the hell it is. And the more primitive a country, the easier it is to take their resources. When we go to an undeveloped country, we say we'll develop your oil and all that if you give it to us for 50 cents or 20 cents a gallon. They sign that agreement. Well, a primitive country can't develop oil pumping systems. They don't know how. So every country that we or France or England invaded, they used their people in the first group of the army. In other words, when they got mad in another country, they sent the Indians from India to go ahead and beat the hell out of the other guy. We use minorities in America to invade islands. Blacks, Filipinos that are born in America, we use them. First shift on the boat, get off and defend the countries. Then when we get to the South Pacific Islands, we said the Chinese and the Japs are coming over to take your land away from you, and your islands and your houses and your women. And they showed them how to use machine guns, primitives. I'm talking about Polynesians. So when the Polynesians saw the Chinese or Japanese coming, they shot them. It made no difference because they were told a lie. And that's what all soldiers are told. The German soldiers say, all Americans are good for is Coca-Cola and cigarettes. That's all I know. And so they looked at Americans and said, Coca-Cola and cigarettes. That's the way they spoke. And so when Germans read about the Russians putting a Sputnik up there in space, the Germans would say, how can you see what the Russians say they've launched out into space? That's all Russian lies and propaganda. That's what they spoke. They laughed. And we always did that with any country that seemed to advance. And some people today in America believe that we haven't landed on the moon. But if you can go to Cape, you can see the rocket take off. I've seen it come over Venus many times. And you see the astronauts, you see the rocket blasting off, vibrating the air all around. So it's easy to check out. Now, if you still have questions about the Venus project, what if two people want to do the same thing? How do we decide that? So ask me questions now, because this is, when you leave here, people will ask you questions. Nobody makes decisions, they arrive at them. So everybody doesn't know what that means? They test things based on, if you grow carrots in certain soils, it doesn't produce. And other soils it does. Sugar cane in the south, certain temperature, it produces sugar cane. But if you don't know, you try it, and you arrive at decisions. You don't make decisions. That means, again, in any industry, a warship is built, then they test it, see how fast it'll go. And if it doesn't go fast enough, they put a larger engine in it. How fast does it have to go? Faster than the enemy ship, but not 10 times as fast. Do you know what I mean? But when the enemy comes out with a ship that's faster than an American ship, they bring them all back and put in larger engines. The Army does that, but not with people. Whether unemployed, hungry, deprivation, they don't. They don't send poor kids to college, although there are a few colleges for the poor, but not enough. And the poor kid can't afford to go to college, has to work. Even if it's free, he still needs money. So he works. And when a black guy got a job, if he was trained as an architect, they'd have him clean out the toilets.